All right, welcome to our deep dive into AI and Christianity.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so, you shared that fascinating YouTube video with us, the one from Answers in Genesis.
Oh yeah, the Christians need to wake up about AI, one.
That's the one. That and those AI responses we got to it.
Right.
We'll try to kind of pull those apart today and see what we can learn, I guess. What do you think? Ready?
Absolutely. I think it's such a huge topic right now.
Yeah.
Like how this technology that's, so cutting edge is, intersecting with faith that goes back, millennia.
Yeah, it's a really interesting intersection for sure.
Yeah, and the video really doesn't pull any punches.
Yeah.
Like AI pastors, AI is a new idol, AI being used for global socialism. It's a lot.
Yeah, there's some big stuff there, and definitely some potentially unsettling stuff. But before we get into all that, maybe we should just start with the basics, like what even is AI?
Sure.
And how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, you hear all this buzz, right, about machine learning and neural networks and all that.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, what does it actually mean? What's going on there?
Right.
So at its core, I mean, AI is really about building computer systems that can do stuff that normally would take a human, like recognizing patterns or making decisions,
Right.
or even things like understanding and responding to language.
So it's like teaching computers to think like people. Is that the idea?
Yeah, in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
But you have to remember, like AI it's really fundamentally different from
Yeah.
human intelligence. We tend to kind of anthropomorphize it.
Yeah.
Like think of it like it's a person or whatever.
Right.
But really it's more like a really, really advanced tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tool that can learn and adapt and solve problems, but it's not self-aware. It doesn't have consciousness or understanding in the same way that we do.
So no HAL 9000 taking over the world yet.
Not quite. Although sometimes, I mean, the pace of development, it's so fast.
Yeah.
It's kind of like science fiction coming to life,
Totally.
And I think one of the things that makes AI so interesting and potentially unsettling is the fact that even the experts who build these systems, they don't always fully understand how they work.
No.
They talk about the inner workings of these systems as a black box.
Black box, huh? That's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But also even more interesting.
Right. And there's a great example of this just recently. A research team was using an AI to look at medical images.
Okay.
And, trying to see if they could detect cancer early on.
Wow.
And the thing is, the AI, it was incredibly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even better than human doctors in some cases.
Wow, that's amazing.
But here's the weird part. When the researchers tried to figure out how the AI was making its diagnoses, they couldn't pinpoint it. They couldn't tell exactly what features in the images the AI was keying in on. It's like the AI had this intuition, or some kind of understanding that we just can't grasp.
So it's almost like AI is developing its own way of thinking that's like alien to us.
Yeah, in a way. And this black box thing, it brings up a lot of questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like about transparency and accountability and about control, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, if we don't know how these systems are making decisions, how can we be sure that they're being used ethically? Yeah. How can we be sure they're being used responsibly?
These are really, really good questions. But before we jump into like the ethical side of things, I think it would be helpful to get a sense of like how we even got here. I mean, AI seems like this huge thing, like it's just exploded onto the scene in the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a history, right? Like it goes way back.
Oh, absolutely. The roots of AI, they actually go back to the middle of the 20th century, like the 1940s and 50s.
Wow.
And it's funny, like some of the early ideas about AI actually came from science fiction writers.
Really?
Yeah, guys like Isaac Asimov.
Oh, wow.
They were writing about robots and intelligent machines and all that. And that really sparked people's imaginations.
Yeah.
And it kind of laid the groundwork for some of the key concepts in AI. Like the idea that you could program machines with ethical rules.
Yeah. So it's like science fiction kind of foreshadowing real-world tech. It happens all the time, right?
It really does, yeah.
But it wasn't just fiction, though, right? Like, there were actual scientists working on AI during that time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In the 1950s, researchers started to understand more about how the human brain actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to the development of artificial neural networks, basically computer systems that are designed to, like, mimic the structure of the brain.
Okay.
And that was a huge breakthrough because it meant machines could learn from data more like how humans learn.
So the 1950s, that was like the big bang of AI.
Yeah, you could say that. There was a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism. And there's this great anecdote about an AI expert who predicted back in 1970 that within 3 to 8 years, we would have machines with the general intelligence of an average human. Like, he said they'd be able to, read Shakespeare, grease a car, tell jokes, even engage in office politics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that prediction didn't quite pan out.
Yeah, it didn't age well.
But it shows you how even like super smart people, they can underestimate how complex it is to replicate human intelligence.
Oh, absolutely. And, despite all the early hype, AI research did go through, periods where it was slow going and even some setbacks. But there were some big milestones along the way, like when Deep Blue beat Kasparov at chess in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then Watson winning Jeopardy in 2011.
I remember watching Watson on Jeopardy. It was like something out of a movie. It was crazy.
It really was.
But even those systems, they were still what you would call like narrow AI, right? Like focused on specific tasks, not that like general intelligence that the early experts had predicted.
Exactly. But then in 2016, something really interesting happened. The AlphaGo program, it defeated a world champion Go player.
Okay, Go. I don't even know what that is.
It's this ancient game.
Okay.
And it's way more complex than chess.
Oh, wow.
A lot of experts thought it would be like decades before AI could master it. But AlphaGo did it. And that was kind of a turning point.
So that was a big deal in the AI world.
It really was. It marked the beginning of a new era in AI. And since then, we've just seen, incredible advancements.
Wow.
Especially in generative AI, Things like ChatGPT, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
These systems can create human quality text, images, music.
Yeah, it's really mind-blowing how far AI has come in such a short time.
It is. It is.
But with all this progress, I think it's natural to feel a little bit, I don't know, apprehensive too, especially when we start thinking about like what all this means for our faith.
Right.
And our understanding of what it means to be human.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the Answers in Genesis video is really helpful.
Okay.
Because they offer this framework for thinking about AI based on what they call the 7 C's of humanity.
The 7 C's of humanity. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So these are like core truths about human nature that they draw from the book of Genesis. And they argue that these truths can help us understand how to use AI responsibly.
So these 7 C's can kind of help us make sense of AI. And what are they, by the way?
Yeah, so they are creatures, costly, corporeal, contingent, communal, called, and corrupted.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of C's.
I know, right? But each one highlights a different aspect of what it means to be human and offers insights into how we relate to technology. Like, for example, the idea that humans are corporeal beings.
Okay.
Meaning we have physical bodies. Yeah. That's really important. It reminds us that we experience the world through our senses, through our physical interactions with the environment and with each other.
Yeah.
But AI, it doesn't have a body.
Right.
It exists in the digital realm. So its understanding of the world is limited by the data it's been trained on.
That's a really good point. It's like we're hardwired for connection and embodiment in a way that AI can never fully replicate.
Exactly. And that's got huge implications for how we think about AI's role in our lives.
Yeah, totally. So maybe instead of asking, like, can AI replace us, we should be asking, how can we use AI in a way that respects our human nature and helps us live out our God-given purpose?
I think that's a much better question, yeah. And one that I think we need to keep exploring as we dig into these 7 C's.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And look at the spiritual and societal challenges that AI throws at us.
That's a good place to go next. Let's do it. It's interesting to think about that corporeal thing, like how that plays out in our relationship with God. Like we were made to connect with him, right, on this like deep personal level, right. and not just through like abstract ideas, but through real experiences, through worship, prayer, community.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if there's a risk that AI could actually like become a barrier between us and God, like a distraction from that real embodied faith that we're called to.
That's a really good point. And it actually gets at one of the core concerns that Answers in Genesis brings up in the video.
Okay.
Which is the the potential for AI to become a new form of idolatry.
Wait, hold on, seriously. Like, people worshiping AI seems a little, I don't know, far-fetched, maybe?
Well, it might sound strange at first, but I think when you think about it, it's not really that different from other kinds of idolatry that we already see, right?
Yeah.
Like, we put our hope and trust in things that can't ultimately fulfill us.
Yeah.
Money, power, fame, technology.
Yeah, yeah.
And AI, with all its knowledge and seemingly unlimited power, it could easily become just another object of misplaced worship.
Okay, yeah. I see how that could happen, especially in a world where, people are more and more skeptical of traditional religion.
Right.
AI could be like this thing that offers certainty and control.
Exactly. And there are already examples of AI being used in ways that kind of blur the lines between the created and the creator.
Okay, like what?
Well, remember the story about that Church of Artificial Intelligence?
Oh, yeah, the one founded by the former Google engineer.
That's the one. I mean, he literally built an AI system that's supposed to be worshipped as a god.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. But do you think that's like a common thing? I mean, most Christians I know aren't exactly rushing out to worship a computer program.
You're right. It's probably not mainstream yet, but it's definitely a sign of the times.
Yeah.
Like it shows how fascinated our culture is with technology.
Right.
And this idea that technology can solve all our problems.
Yeah.
And even if we don't, literally worship AI, I think we can still fall into the trap of giving it too much power.
Okay.
Too much authority.
Like relying on it for all our decisions. Or treating what it says as like gospel truth.
Exactly. And it's not just about, overt worship either.
Okay.
There's also the more subtle danger of AI shaping our worldview and our values in ways that we don't even realize. I mean, we're constantly interacting with AI systems that are programmed with certain assumptions and biases.
Right.
It's inevitable that those things are going to start to influence our own thinking.
It's like we're being programmed by the technology we use without even realizing it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to approach AI with a discerning mind.
Okay.
And with a solid biblical foundation.
Right.
We need to be able to critically evaluate the information we're getting, whether it's from an AI or any other source.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to filter it through the lens of God's truth.
So it's not about rejecting AI completely, but about using it wisely, responsibly.
Exactly.
Being aware of the potential benefits, but also the potential pitfalls.
Right. I mean, AI is a powerful tool. But like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil,
Yeah, that's true.
It all comes down to the intentions of the people who are creating it and the people who are using it.
Okay, that makes sense. And this kind of brings us to another area where AI presents some big challenges, which is the impact on society as a whole.
Right. I mean, AI is not just a technological phenomenon. It's a social and cultural force, It's already changing how we live, how we work, how we relate to each other.
Right.
And it's bringing up some really important questions about the future of work, about the nature of human connection.
Yeah.
Even about the very fabric of our democracy.
I mean, one of the things that worries me is how AI could make existing inequalities even worse. It seems like the benefits of AI, they often end up in the hands of just a few people.
Yeah.
While the costs like job displacement, privacy violations, algorithmic bias, those things tend to hit people who are already marginalized.
That's a very valid concern. And it's something we have to be really careful about as AI keeps developing.
Yeah.
If we're not careful, it could create a world where the gap between the haves and the have-nots just gets wider and wider.
It's like we're at this turning point, right? This technological revolution. And it could either lift humanity up, or it could create even more division, more injustice.
And the choices we make now are going to determine which way it goes. That's why it's so important to have these conversations, to really think about the implications of AI and to advocate for its development and use in a way that aligns with our values, our vision for a just and equitable society.
Absolutely. But it's not just about, advocating for ethical AI development. It's also about preparing ourselves and our communities to navigate this new landscape.
Right.
Like the Answers in Genesis video, they really emphasize the importance of strengthening our foundations.
Yeah.
Spiritual, intellectual, and interpersonal.
Right. They argue that in order to withstand the challenges of the AI age, we need to build a strong spiritual foundation by deepening our relationship with God. We need to cultivate a strong intellectual foundation by engaging with Scripture and developing a biblical worldview.
Right.
And we need to nurture a strong interpersonal foundation by investing in authentic Christian community.
So it's like building a strong house that can stand up to the storms of technological change.
Exactly. And all three of these foundations are crucial. I mean, if our spiritual foundation is weak, we're more likely to be swayed by the latest trends and ideologies, including the ones that are being pushed through AI. If our intellectual foundation is shaky, we won't have the discernment to tell the difference between truth and falsehood in the digital age. And if our interpersonal foundation is fragile, we'll be more susceptible to the isolation and loneliness that technology can often make worse.
So they're calling for a holistic response to AI, right? One that engages our hearts, our minds, and our relationships.
Exactly. And it's a call that I think every Christian needs to take seriously. We can't just sit back and watch this technological revolution happen. We need to be active participants, shaping the future of AI in a way that honors God and reflects his love for humanity.
Okay, but how do we do that? Like, practically speaking? It all feels a little overwhelming,
I know. It's a lot to take in. But the good news is the Answers in Genesis video, they do offer some practical suggestions. And I think they're a good place to start.
So they're not just saying, like, beware of AI.
Right.
They're also saying, like, here's how to use it in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about, like, hiding from it.
Right.
Pretending it's not going to affect us.
Right.
It's about engaging with it, understanding it, and then figuring out how to use it for good.
Okay, so what are some of their suggestions? What do they say we can do?
Well, one of the big things they talk about is having a strong biblical worldview.
Okay.
They say that if you really understand Scripture, it gives you the tools you need to think critically about AI, to see both the good and the bad, and to use it in a way that lines up with God's purposes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, if we're not grounded in our faith, it's easy to get, I don't know, swept up in the latest trend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or ideologies, even the ones that AI is promoting.
Right.
But how does that play out in real life? You know what I mean? Like, can you give me an example?
Sure. Like, let's say you're trying to make a tough decision.
Okay.
Like maybe it's about your job or a relationship or money problems or something.
Yeah, those are tough.
Right. And it's tempting to just turn to AI for answers,
Yeah.
Like you use a chatbot or an algorithm to tell you what to do.
Right. Just tell me the answer.
But a biblical worldview, it reminds you that real wisdom, it comes from seeking God. Through prayer, through studying his word, and through talking to people you trust.
Yeah.
Wise people in your life.
So it's about remembering that AI is a tool. Right? It's not like some kind of magic 8-ball.
Exactly.
It can give you information, it can give you insights, but it doesn't replace the need for us to think for ourselves and to rely on God.
Absolutely. And a biblical worldview can also help us deal with some of the scarier stuff that people say about AI.
Okay.
Like the fear that AI is going to get so smart that it'll just take over. Become this huge threat to humanity.
That's a classic sci-fi movie plot, right?
It is. It is. But, a biblical worldview reminds us that God is in control. He's sovereign. And no matter how advanced technology gets, it can't take his place.
Right.
It can't mess up his plans.
That's actually really comforting.
Right. It helps to put things in perspective.
It really does.
And it also, it frees us up to engage with AI in a more positive way.
Okay.
Instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah.
We can focus on the opportunities it gives us to serve God, to serve others.
So it's not about, fighting against AI. It's about finding ways to use it for good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Answers in Genesis give some really cool examples of how they're doing that.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, for one thing, they're using AI to streamline their operations, to make it easier to get biblical resources out to people.
Okay.
To reach a wider audience.
Yeah.
They're also using it for translation. breaking down language barriers,
Yeah.
spreading the gospel all over the world.
Yeah.
And they're even working on a chat bot.
The chat bot.
Yeah, that's trained on biblical values to help people find answers to their questions.
That's really interesting.
Right. And to grow in their faith.
Those are some great examples. It shows how AI can really be a force for good.
Right.
If it's used intentionally and guided by a biblical worldview.
It does. It does. And they challenge us to do the same,
Yeah.
to find creative ways to use AI for God's glory.
I love that. So it's not about being afraid of AI.
Right.
It's about seeing what it can do, understanding its limits,
Yeah.
and using it in a way that honors God and helps to build his kingdom.
I think that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, this has been a really, really interesting conversation. It has. We've talked about so much, from the technical stuff about AI to the big questions about faith and what it means to be human. But I think the main thing I'm taking away from this is that AI is a tool. Mm-hmm. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's up to us as humans made in God's image to decide how we use it.
I agree. Yeah.
So as we wrap things up here,
I
want to leave you with this question. How do you see AI fitting into your life, your work? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And how can you use this powerful tool for good in a way that's grounded in your faith and motivated by love for God and for other people?
Those are great questions to think about.
They are. They really are.
I hope you keep exploring these things, keep asking questions, keep seeking God's wisdom.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, may you be blessed with discernment, creativity, and a passion for using technology to make a positive impact on the world.
That's a great blessing.